Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm sitting here in Golden, Colorado with one of my best friends growing up, Adam Westfall. He and I have known each other for about 17 years, and Adam is one of those guys who would be doing backflips off the trampoline, riding air mattresses down waterfalls, doing all this kind of crazy stuff. So I've known him on a very personal level like that, but the reason that he's sitting here with me today is because he does downhill skateboarding, which is it's quite a unique niche field, but that's exactly why I wanted to have him on. He was world ranked. He still competes, and he's going to go into all these details in a little bit. But yeah, just happy to have you on, man.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So the first question is start with the very basics. What is downhill skateboarding? Because there's a lot of people who might not be familiar with the terminology or so forth, right?
So downhill skateboarding is, some people might call it longboarding, and they're not wrong, but we try to distance ourselves from that name a little bit. But basically it's like riding a skateboard that's longer than a standard, skateboard. Like it's not like a park board, like a street, like a normal skateboard. It's a little bit longer.
Like a Tony Hawk board.
But yeah, it's not a Tony Hawk board. Big soft wheels, little bit longer wheelbase than a standard board, than a standard street deck. And this is one right here. So
yeah, we go.
Yeah, the components are pretty different, but basically it's just riding that down big, steep, windy hills.
So here we go. Here's the longboard.
So yeah, this is.
So I guess the top where you stand is that that kind of material. What is that made
it's
of?
still grip tape. So grip tape is what we call on a normal
Okay.
skate. All the components are the same as a normal skateboard. You got a deck with grip tape on top. You got trucks, which is like the axle, the turning apparatus also acts as your suspension in a lot of ways. And then you got wheels and bearings. That all is the same. It's just the geometry of all that. It's the shape and math behind all of it that's pretty different. So, yeah, you can tell it doesn't look like a normal, you're not popping kickflips on this thing. You know what I mean? So, you can actually. You can pop a kickflip on it, but it's
not going downhill.
Yeah. It's a bit different. So
and what's this guy in the front?
So that's the one component that's not on a normal skateboard. This is called a foot stop.
Okay.
And basically what it does is you rest your foot up against this, and it it kind of keeps your foot from slipping around, gives you a reference point to stand on, put some pressure against it. And yeah, it gives you some leverage when you're drifting and stuff. So it's just a good thing to have to keep you a little more stable on the board.
Okay. Sweet.
So this one's a big metal one. Some people's are made out of plastic. Some people's are just like a bushing, one of these pieces with a bottle cap on top, and you just bolt it on. Anything at all to give your foot a reference spot to plant against is basically what that's for.
Okay. Sweet, man. Yeah, this is definitely a lot bigger than the boards I'm used to. So now the other part of the gear, I guess, is this guy right here, this helmet, and the suit that we have behind. And the reason that you need this, unlike skateboarding, is because you're going downhill upwards of how fast can you go?
You can go
when you're full tilt.
Yeah, so full tilt. The fastest races on the circuit hover around or a little above the 70-mile-an-hour mark.
Wow.
And the fastest anyone has ever gone, I should probably know this number. It's 91 or 93. It's right in the low 90s. It's in that territory. There's maybe 4 people who've gone over 90. And then the list widens a little bit for in the 80s and a little bit more for the 70s, or a lot more for the 70s.
Holy man.
That's the range for the peak speed at the fastest races on the circuit.
Okay.
Standard day that you're just out training, skating your local is probably 45, 50. Somewhere in there.
Still fast.
Maybe 60, depending on what your local is. Sure.
But when you're just going out just to kind of do training, Adam and I went out this morning I got to witness it all firsthand. It was really cool. But you didn't use the suits, and I'm assuming these are just because these are for racing, right?
Yeah. So the suits are pretty much for going fast. They help protect you too. Right. That's an added benefit, but it's really for the aerodynamics. That's the
okay.
That, and it's both. It's helpful, but they're I don't typically wear it when I go out and just skate. I wear the helmet, I wear gloves, and a spine protector. And that's pretty much it. You know, long pants,
Wow. Yeah.
Sometimes a long sleeve shirt. And then the leathers are like, pretty much for racing only, or rare occasions where we want to go real fast out. Just in the wild.
Okay. It's crazy. It's crazy to think that like that would make a like a noticeable difference by like, because it's just like just the material makes it more aerodynamic. You know what I mean? Like you were even saying that the way that the stitching is affects it, right?
Yeah. So like the patches basically. So like this is an old school suit where the patches are stitched on versus just screen printed on. And that speeds it up. But yeah, I mean the setup is really important to have an aerodynamic setup. Like it's custom made to fit your body. I mean, you go to a person, get measured, have it custom made for you. You know what I mean? And it makes a huge difference. It's a lot faster. It is like night and day.
That's crazy. And so when you're going downhill, I guess again, just kind of like longboard 101 here. Like when you skateboard, your feet are kind of like parallel generally, right? But with longboarding, it's a totally different way that the footwork's different.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially for racing. So when we talk about downhill, there's like the sport as a whole, which involves like free riding and racing, and then there's a lot of ways to do it, right? Like you can ride down the hill and bust a bunch of skids left and right, really fun and stylish, or you can just like go, like pin it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like racing, even if you're not racing, you could be skating like that style. You know what I mean? Like you're just going fast. It's all speed.
Yeah.
So when you're doing that, your feet are pretty much parallel to the board. I mean, it's a mostly forward-facing front foot and entirely forward-facing back foot for the majority of the ride.
Okay.
As opposed to street skating where you're pretty much planted,
right.
Like surfer style.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean that's definitely it's definitely a difference, but it just makes sense. Like if you start doing it, it gets you in tuck and stuff. Like it definitely, if you came from street skating, it might throw you off at first, but it's a superior way to ride down a hill, because you're not ready. You don't have to get in a stance to pop an ollie. You don't have to be like ready to throw a kickflip or something. You know what I mean? You don't need to leverage the tail at all. So your back foot positioning is 90 degrees from a street deck.
Right. Yeah. And now, so you're going this fast. As someone who doesn't skateboard, how do you stop?
Yeah. So get that question a lot. Basically, you've got like these gloves with pucks on them. Actually, we got one right here. So you got a glove. It's a standard glove. It's got like a hard plastic puck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you just put that on the ground, and then you like can drift the board sideways.
Okay.
You can also drift without putting the hand on the ground.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like the difference when we're talking about like free riding versus skate, like downhill, like racing and stuff is. Typically, you're not doing what they call stand-up slides.
Okay. Oh, yeah,
in a race.
And
unless occasionally you do. We might cut to that clip. Actually, we'll see. There is like a classic. There's like a great clip of me like slamming after I tried to do a stand-up slide in a race and just get annihilated. Yeah. So I might be eating those words in a second, but
So like earlier today, you were saying, you and another rider were saying how like you could. Foot brake. Yeah.
So that's like
you wouldn't do that in a race though, right? Or would you?
You might.
Really?
You might. Yeah. I definitely have. But I like the foot brake, and not everybody likes the foot brake. So yeah, but that basically just involves taking your foot off and just putting it on the ground. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And it's definitely it's a good way to learn when you're first getting into the sport. It's a great way to like slow down and like take things at a slower pace. It becomes, when you're first starting, it's the easy way to brake. And then when you're going faster, it becomes not the easy way to brake anymore. You're like, oh my God, I got to take my foot off and put it on the ground. And I'm going like 60. Like, I don't want to do that right now. You know what I mean? Because there's a moment of hesitation in between before it hits the ground that you're like, oh man, I got to really stay real still. You know what I mean? But it's actually a super effective tool for skating safely on like open roads, because you can do it in a straight line and you can modulate speed like in smaller increments.
Sure, yeah.
Because if you're busting a drift, like basically you're saying to everyone behind you, we're all busting a skid right now. Like
Yeah.
everyone's going to have to slide right now. You know what I mean? Whereas a foot brake is like, they can maybe go around you or slide if they want to, or like foot brake if they want. Like they get a few more options potentially.
Okay.
You know, and they don't have to like take up the whole road sliding, and it's just like less of an operation.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So, okay, so we kind of got the basics covered in terms of like so longboarding is synonymous with downhill skateboarding. It's just downhill skateboarding is like the official.
Yeah, well, downhill, yeah, and like longboarding has other like
I guess downhill is
too,
more
because
like
there's like
the
people that
racing
like
aspect,
do
right?
like dancing is really popular, like longboard dancing. It's like probably more popular than downhill, honestly. And yeah, like at least on like Instagram or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess longboard would be like the board.
Yeah,
right?
pretty much. And so like it's longboarding. It's a big soft wheel.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you kind of have to accept that it is longboarding.
Yeah, yeah.
But we typically call it like downhill skateboarding. It's like the way that if you're talking to another longboarder and you're trying to be like, are you like a downhiller or are you like a campus cruiser? You know what I mean? Like where do you stack up? If they say I'm a downhill skateboarder, you're like, okay, you like, we're talking about the same sport.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. That is what's kind of interesting about it. It's like it's the same board, but you can branch off into all these different like sports essentially with the same exact thing. It's just how you kind of maneuver it. You know what I mean?
And you know, even the line between like skateboarding and longboarding is like, I mean, it's blurrier than people think, right? Because like, how short do I have to make it before it's a board? Like, how small and how hard do I make the wheels?
Right. Yeah.
Before it's like a longboard. Like if I take a normal longboard and I cut the nose off and I make the wheelbase like 1 inch longer and I make the wheels like, 10 millimeters bigger and like a little bit soft, like is that a longboard? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Nice, man. How about let's get into like the actual racing, right? So Adam here, I guess before we get into the strategy of it, maybe just explain like how does professional downhill skateboarding work and like how do the rankings work? Because you were world ranked in 2018 and you finished the season 7th, I believe. So
7th was my my highest fish.
So how does that work?
There's it structurally can get a little complicated with the organizations because we're kind of between different organizations right now. But I mean, basically, there's at any given time, there's one major organization that runs an international race circuit that really anyone can compete in. It's not like you don't have to qualify to like show up to the event and race. You can just show up and race, and that's the World Cup. That's as high as it gets. It's like the absolute cream of the crop.
Sure.
So I've been on that tour a number of times, or parts of that tour. Since 2017 was my first time like racing internationally. Before that I had raced like small time stuff and what we call outlaws, which are like completely unsanctioned on like a semi-closed road. Bobby parked his truck at the bottom type thing or whatever. So like that's like the way most people get into it. It's like you go to your local outlaw, you do pretty well, then you find like a big event near you and you go to that. And then if you get psyched on that and you want to go like travel the world and spend all your money going to race skateboards, then you can do that. And you can make that decision. And that's basically what I did. I raced for a little bit. Was doing okay in like 2016 or 17. I raced some outlaws and I was like, this is going actually pretty good. Some of the guys I was racing against were on the circuit and they were doing really well. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to jump on the circuit. I'm just going to do it. And so, I like got a suit and like flew to Europe.
A couple sponsors or whatever.
Yeah. And went to do it. And like, it's, a lot of people ask do sponsors pay for it? And the long story short, no, they don't at pretty much any level. I mean, they help some of the top folks out, especially if they're good content creators and they put a lot out and they win a lot, they get some help and support, but it's pretty mild, the financial support. It's mostly like a passion project for all these guys. So the majority of the downhill scene is like funding it all year. Like they are working in the off season and to fund their tour, and then they go on tour, they blow all their money, maybe get a credit card, maybe put some stuff
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
Visa or whatever, and the MasterCard, and then do it again.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
every year. That's pretty much the way it goes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a mixed bag. You know, it's like it would be nice to like get, you know, have money in the sport, but at the same time, it's pretty pure right now. Like it's pretty like everybody there is there because they just love racing
that's sweet.
skateboards. You know what I mean? And so it keeps it super friendly. This scene is incredibly tight knit. I mean, the global scene.
Yeah, sure.
Particularly for like racing. I mean, there's not that many people showing up to these races, so you know it's your buddies. You know, you got a couch to crash on in like every continent. Like,
well, and it's pretty interesting that, or I guess it's a really good opportunity for you to travel and go to like these really cool places in
absolutely
all around the world for these kinds of tournaments. So, is there like a specific spot or like area of the world that's like way harder than others? Like, is American courses or whatever you want to call them, like how do they compare to like Europe or like any other?
You mean as far as the tracks, not the local competition, but like the course itself, the track, the road.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say that it's harder by country. I mean, any country with mountains is going to have, you know, good downhill. So it's more track specific. You know, it's more just like everybody knows that one is sick or this one is, you know, pretty mellow. So no, I wouldn't say that it's that way by country, but the competition can be difficult by country. You know what I mean? So like Brazil has a ton of heavy hitters.
Really?
And yeah, a lot of them don't go on the tour, you know, because like the exchange rate is like pretty gnarly for Brazilians. So I've yet to race in Brazil. I'm hoping to go in a few weeks actually. So maybe by the time this is released, that won't be true anymore. But yeah, by all accounts, it's like you pull up in Brazil and just get dusted by people you've never heard of. You know what I mean? Do you have like a favorite spot or like that you've been so far? I think I would have to say, and I think a lot of people would probably say this as well, is at least one of the most surprising spots is like the country of Romania.
Really?
Is sick.
Okay.
Yeah, like downhill is incredible. The people are super nice.
Sure.
Everything's very affordable.
Yeah.
And there's like some untapped gold out there. Like we would go out for a couple of races at a time, you know, and have like a week in between and just go out into the mountains and just chain smoke runs. Like just skate constantly. You know what I mean? Like, you know, triple A-frame mountains, which is basically like there's a front and a back that's skatable for 3 mountains in a row. You know, like you can just drive, you know, up and down each side and get 6 different runs within 20 miles or something. You know, it just skate like constant laps. And so that's a really cool country. And they've got some heavy hitting races. They've got Paso Volcan, which is like, it's at a ski resort out there. So it's like a gondola accessed road, you know what I mean? So you get to the bottom, you just take the ski gondola up to the top. And it's like really steep and really fast. I think it's currently the fastest on the circuit.
Oh, really?
I think they've clocked the fact, like, don't like, you know, like,
hold you to
fact
it.
check me on that.
And
that could be wrong, especially with some races coming up. But I believe they've got currently the top speed at like at a standard race.
Sure,
Rather than like there's an event that's just for top speed. It's called Top Speed Challenge, and it's a different deal. It's not, you're not exactly racing. You're like just going
that's like
alone.
time trials or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that doesn't really count. But
sure.
Yeah, as far as a standard like on the circuit race, it's up there.
And is that considered the Alps, or is that like, I guess my geography is a little messed up here, but
I should really know the name of that mountain range. I don't think it would be considered the Alps
because I think it's still it's east more.
Transylvania. It's the area. The area is Transylvania. I don't know what the mountain range. I should probably know what the mountain range is called, but I don't. So, but yeah, I mean the Alps are pretty sweet as well.
Yeah.
Been there a number of times, and there's like some crazy long runs out there, and some pretty cool scenery, and it's pretty killer.
Awesome, man. And now in terms of like the league that you were saying, so is it kind of like, I don't know if this is like an apples to apples comparison, but would it be like the Major League Baseball and the minor leagues, or is it more like Major League Soccer in the U.S. versus like Europa League?
It would be like
they're the same professional level. It's just they're different competitions.
I'm trying to think of like what like the best way to describe it. It would be it would be comparable to like if you had Formula One, except anyone could show up and race.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's the top level, but it's also the only level.
Right.
Like it's the only, organization basically. But I mean that's complicated because it's kind of too complicated in the logistics of like there are some other governing bodies and stuff. But
right. But pretty much that's like the main.
Given year, there's typically one governing body.
Right.
It happens to be switching over right now, so it's extra complicated. But
historically,
it's been the International Downhill Federation is the only major governing body for international skateboarding.
Okay, got it.
And then there's like maybe a country has its own championship, but that's not like you have to be a resident. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So then so when you finished the season 7th, like how did the points work, like the rankings, how's that all calculated?
So typically they take your top, like for whatever it is in a year. At that time they were taking like your top 7 races, I think.
Okay.
So there's a season of maybe like, I don't know, 14 races or something. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
13, 10, a dozen or so races.
Yeah.
And you could go to as many as you wanted, and they would take your top like 7 results. Some of them counted for more points than others, and So basically, I went to the number I needed to go to. I went to like 7 races, and they just take your points, your final finish. Allot to a point, and they add up all the points.
Right, and it is positional. It's not.
It is position. So there's timed qualifying. So the way a standard race works is you show up and there's maybe it's like a 3-day event. The first day is a practice day, so you might have a whole day like skate 10 laps or something like that. And then the next day is timed qualifying. So solo runs, just you and a timing system, and you just go as fast as you can. They take your best one of those and they stack those up to seed a bracket. And that bracket is typically a 64-person bracket, and it's 4-person heats with the top 2 advancing.
Okay.
So you drop in with 3 other people, and top 2 move forward, the bottom 2 are out.
Oh, I see.
And you just keep working your way all the way through. So it's typically 5 rounds of racing because it's 64 people and 4 per heat. So you got first round, second round, quarters, semis, finals, and that's a race.
And so I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but in general, to contrast that with like a timed race, where you could have a set number of laps, but it's just the fastest, and it's not necessarily like skateboarding. It could be like auto racing. Like any time that there's like a timed race, it's like you have a set number of laps, and then it's the fastest lap. Like the order is determined by the speed, or I guess the time that it took you to complete a lap. But when we say positional, it's literally just what position did you cross the finish line.
Who's in front.
Right.
Which it sounds like it's the same thing as time, because like for that run, I mean, it is the same time, right? Like if we start at the same time and I finished first, obviously I did it in less time. But it's really different because you've got 3 other people on the track with you trying to beat you for a position. You know what I mean? Which makes it really different because there's a lot of drafting. I mean, at these speeds like that's quite a bit of drafting involved.
Yeah,
that's a major part of it. And so you've got to really fight for lines, and it's pretty aggressive racing, and you're not allowed to like make intentional contact, but it's pretty well accepted that you can make a little bit of contact. Rubbin's racing. You can like shoulder bump a little, not like check, but if I'm here and you're there and our shoulders are touching, that's like that's not against the rules. So and nor is it against the rules to like give somebody a little touch from behind just to let them know you're there.
Oh yeah, sure.
But so having positional racing is very different than time qualifying, and the lines are different. So the way you might want to race, like, I mean, this gets like pretty in the weeds, but as far as like how you apex a corner, like, if you're skating it alone, you can late apex, so you can enter the turn later because you don't have to worry about
apex being the sharp, like the
apex,
the peak of the turn.
Yeah, it's like the closest point on the turn. Like if so you start on if it's a right hand turn, you start on the left side, you come in close to the right, and then back out left. That closest point to the inside edge of the road is like your apex point typically. And so if you're alone, you can take that late, you can leave open a gap, that someone could have theoretically passed you because it's just you, it's fine.
Yeah.
But when you're with somebody else, it's like, even though that may be the faster line, if they can get there before you, they might be going slower, but they're still in front of you. So you're just going to have to slow down.
Yeah.
If they do it correctly, then you're just jammed up.
Right.
You're like, great, you took the fast line, but you're in second.
So when you're going around those turns, how kind of like explain how like sliding plays into that.
So sliding is it's a 2-part system. It works as brakes. It also works as like setting you up for a turn. So
right.
It's like you typically try to slide a direction that's going to give you the brakes, and then also your board, by the time you're done braking, it'll be pointed the right direction.
Right, and then
to where you grip up on the wheels, and it'll put you through the turn.
Right. It's kind of interesting how, in a funny way, when you compare it to like go-karting, because like not necessarily NASCAR, but like auto racing, but like when you have go-karts, because they're so small and they have so much like swing to them, that when you come out of the corners, it's the same kind of thing. Like once you get the wheels lined up, you want to like mash the gas and go,
Yeah.
So I guess with longboarding, it's more of like getting set and like.
Yeah, it changes up the lines a little bit because you don't have an engine. So you've got to get your braking done at a point where you can grab, like a lot of turns dip the most in the middle of the turn. So like in a point where in a car you might brake through that and then just get on the gas afterwards.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to stop braking a little earlier so you can catch the drop of the turn to like accelerate you a little bit.
Right.
So it does change the lines from like a car, but that's the same concept. I mean, you brake,
break into the turn,
apex,
gas out of it,
you brake and then dive in, and
right.
The gravity's the gas. So just get tucking.
So, because there's no engine, what makes one longboarder faster than another? Like what kind of? I mean, we talked about the aerodynamics a little bit.
Aerodynamics is probably number one. I think you really can't get away from saying
And so a big part of that too is like your position that you're standing on the board.
How tight your tuck is.
Yeah.
How much you weigh. Because like if you can pack more weight into a smaller space, then you're faster. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's it's not like dropping hammers on the moon, right? Like there is air resistance. So if you put more weight on and have this equal air resistance, like you will go faster. So
right.
A little bit of weight and a lot of aerodynamics. Line choice, like how efficiently are you moving through the turns? Like you're talking about, like with a go-kart, like where are you on the track as you go through it? Like just classic racing stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's the push. That's a big one. So like coming off the line, it's a push start. We don't have gates. We don't have like a ramp or anything. It's just a start line, and you just fire off pushes.
Yeah.
So you just try to
get more power.
Big old hamstring.
Go
push. Yeah. So that's a pretty major part of it too. You know, and then it's just strategy, drafting. Being aggressive, being like making smart decisions to navigate around people, and play defense a little bit. Like not leave spots open, and close them off appropriately without like. There's rules about blocking. You can't just like weave all over the road, but
Oh yeah. So I guess what would be like a good defense?
Yeah, it's really hard to describe, but you know it when you see it as a racer, where somebody will, they'll do things like apex as late as possible while not giving you a chance to get the gap, or some folks will do something like enter a turn. So say it's a right-hand turn, and you normally would want to enter that from the left side of the road.
Right.
But you can stay on the right side of the road until the very beginning of the turn, and then snap over to the left, and then snap into the turn. And that's totally legal. It's a setup. It's a setup carve basically. So you're like, you get over to the other side and then dive in, and that's totally fair. But you've you're
kind of cutting off that line for other people, I guess.
Yeah. In a legal way,
Right.
But
sure,
So I mean, the defense is a huge part, and it's definitely tricky, and you gotta hear the like the wind and stuff, because you don't have mirrors. Like, you have no way to know.
Yeah.
You gotta listen for somebody behind you, or like watch for their shadow or something to even know that they're coming in. You know what I
Right.
mean? And then when they're coming in, you're like, okay, well, should I start turning now? Is it time to dive in, or do I wait? You know, it's like,
Yeah.
so yeah, like that awareness of what's going on. Situational awareness is huge, and
Sure.
all that stuff plays a role.
So it obviously doesn't always work out. Sometimes there's some pretty gnarly wrecks in downhill skateboarding. So, like, you know, you're going fast and you kind of have no real I mean, you have the suit, but like it's not. So what's it like to go through a crash at that speed?
Yeah.
Downhill like that.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it depends on what kind of crash you're talking about. So like, there's, you know, at a race, there's hay bales and you're in a suit, so it's like the level gets turned up a little bit. Like you can crash really hard and probably be okay.
Yeah.
You know, there's only so many things to hit, and that's not to say like people have hit heinous things on race courses that you know, like, and ended up in really bad situations. But for the most part, most of the time at a race, it's scary, but you're probably going to be physiologically sound afterward.
It's just more like you're
more or less.
And I guess,
I mean,
like your
you know,
adrenaline's pumping, so like you don't even really feel it.
I mean,
Or,
when
I
you
mean-
get what's called Maytag, you know, like a washing machine, you get the Maytag effect. You get spun up after a crash. It hurts. I mean, and it's spooky. And you hit hay bales at, you know, 40, 50 miles an hour. It's like, it sucks. You know? And even with the suit, what I like to tell people is, I'm like, yeah, okay, you got the suit on, but like, let me, to put it in perspective, like, you know, if you want to ever feel what that's like we could put you in a car and we can go drive 45 miles an hour. I'll give you the suit and you can just jump out of the car. That's pretty much what it's like. You know what I mean? So it's not fun.
Yeah.
But it is okay. It's ultimately, you know, you're kind of low to the ground. You can usually just baseball slide it out. So 99% of the time, it's fine.
Yeah.
At a race. On an open road, when you're training and stuff, that's when it's like actually like genuinely dangerous. You know, you got to like,
Because of cars.
yeah, there's cars,
or just
guardrails, trees, cliffs, rocks.
Yeah.
Anything, you know, anything hard or steep.
I guess that just clicked for me. So like when in a race, when you say hay bales, that's like in all the dangerous parts they barricade that with. Oh, I see.
Yeah. So there's like something soft to hit.
Right.
But it's not like a washout. It's like you watch like MotoGP or something. They've got a big washout zone.
Yeah.
And so they just like they slide out of it most of the time.
Right.
I mean, granted, you know, they're going like whatever, like 200
Yeah,
plus.
super
You know what I mean?
fast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
hideously fast.
Yeah.
But we don't have that.
Right.
Because most courses don't have that. We don't have purpose-built tracks.
Yeah.
They're just roads. So there's usually a guardrail, and there's usually hay stacked all against the guardrail.
Okay.
But if you're on an open road, there's no hay, and there's still a guardrail, and that can be very dangerous. You know, it's like you gotta really not mess up.
Yeah.
It's imperative that you not
Get
mess
it.
up.
Get it right.
Get it right. Because I mean, it's, you know, really bad stuff can happen.
Yeah,
if
of
you
course.
do-
Yeah,
if you
like
play it wrong, I
any
mean,
racing, you know.
yeah.
What I mean? Yeah.
So yeah, when you're training, you know, like open roads, you should probably be skating them like 80%,
Yeah.
75%. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you rein it in. You don't have to pin it.
Yeah.
You know, like you shouldn't be taking all the juice into every turn all the time because
Yeah.
like eventually you'll get hurt.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
You know, or worse. Yeah.
So there's a picture on I think it was like your Instagram or something where your whole like leg was bloody red.
Oh yeah.
What was that?
What
What
you're
happened
talking
there?
about. Oh man, yeah. That was actually that was the first corner of the first run of the first race of the year that year. It was like he showed up to New York and dropped in, and I went. I was with this huge pack of guys, which you never do when you're like first run. You don't skate with like 15 other people, but we did, and we were all getting psyched up, and so we drop in, and we're like, yeah, let's go, you know.
Yeah,
and we're all tucking together, and it's supposed to be like a pretty mild course, like compared to the other courses. So we're thinking we're just gonna like, you know, open the throttle.
Yeah.
And I took a horrible line and just absolutely I wasn't even close to making it. I shot straight into the hay bales, and my buddy Jaime was behind me, and he decided to follow my line and like shot straight into the hay bales with me, and his board basically just like garbed me in the leg.
Oh man.
And like busted it open.
Jesus.
And
Did that send you to the hospital or was it
yeah, I went to the hospital. They did like They like put like 2 staples in or something.
Yeah.
It ended up being a kind of a non-issue. It was just like
Yeah.
a surprising amount of blood, like in a pretty fast time, but it was really not like a major injury. But it worked out. It worked out. It probably worked out better than it busted open, actually, because if you've ever seen like a hematoma on somebody's leg, you know, like where you get popped with something really good and it doesn't break the skin, then it hurts a lot worse and swells up. So yeah, it ended up working out. But
you're here to tell the tale.
Yeah, I think I had to skip that race and the next one, which was a bummer. But yeah, it made for some good photos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, we were washing that. We were washing the suit out, or I was washing the suit out and like the shoes and stuff in this like hotel bathroom afterward, and it just looked like a crime scene in there. Like it was so much, because it was like a good amount of blood loss. You know, not like a dangerous amount of blood loss, but like, you know, significant
enough to turn people's heads. Like,
yeah.
That
So it's like I was like, I've got like a bottle of baking soda that I'm trying to like clean my like suit and my shoe off. You know what I mean? And like in this hotel bathroom, and it's just like blood all over the shower and stuff.
Crazy.
That's pretty funny.
Now, in terms of racing, I guess something we haven't really touched on yet is like there's a whole different kind of downhill with luge skating.
Yeah.
So how I guess like start with the basics. Like what is a luge skateboard? Like how does
so
how do you maneuver it?
So there's a couple of like other sports that go along with a lot of major downhill events, and that's downhill inline, gravity bikes, and street luge.
Okay.
So gravity bike is a bike with no pedals. It's just like it just rides on gravity. They're like purpose built. They're mostly hand built, like hand welded frames for like they'll use like some parts from a BMX bike.
Okay.
And they like lay super far forward, like Superman style, and they just like kick in and jump on and like race.
Are there brakes or is it like?
Yeah, there's brakes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Then the inline is just like it sounds. There's just inline, and those dudes are really, really gnarly. Like they're busting drifts on the inline skates, like full deal. They're sick. But the most common one that we share the most events with, we share almost every event, is street luge.
Okay.
And that's basically lay down skateboarding with like, there's a lot less restrictions on their setup. So they've got oftentimes 3 sets of trucks instead of 2.
Yeah.
So like there's 6 wheels.
Right.
And they're big metal boards and like there's handles on it, and you like, I mean, I've only ridden one like one time, but you like lean to steer. It's a complicated system. You like lean against the rail of it and like put your weight on this rail to like steer. I don't know. It's gnarly.
Yeah.
It's gnarly, and they go super fast. Our times end up being pretty similar because they have to like pedal in with their hands, which is like, pretty slow.
Oh, right.
But then the top speeds are really fast, and the crashes are like really pretty rare but brutal. When you see what happened, man, they're super brutal. I watched this guy in Ohio, like, and you think there's no hills in Ohio. There's one hill in Ohio, and it's pretty sick. And I watched this dude just explode on the side of this wall, dude. Like he blew it in the fastest chicane. Chicane's like a quick like turn and then turn back. And he like missed it and just got ejected, dude. I swear this man was like his like hips were like at head height, and I was like, and they're kind of it's a lot of older folks in that crowd.
Yeah.
So I can't remember. I think if he's the dude I was thinking of, I'm pretty sure he's like I think he's like 60.
Jesus.
I'd have to like double check that, but he's like older to be getting ejected like that. He's like pretty old. I was like, dude, that man just got led to the Lord. But yeah, wild, so we share events with them, and we travel together, and they're around the same stuff. It's a smaller scene, even than downhill. So they piggyback on the same events. We use the same road closures and stuff, or sometimes they hold the events and we're piggybacking on their event. Even though like we're typically more of the participants. But
sweet. Now, what was the inspiration for all this? Like, where did let's go back to your pre-longboarding days. Like, what kind of got the gears spinning to think about like, did you used to do like kind of I don't. What'd you call it? Like regular.
Like just skateboarding.
Skateboarding.
Yeah.
Like and
Yeah,
then
I mean,
that
some
guy,
people call it like shortboarding or street skating or park skating or trick skating.
Park
Skateboarding is probably just the best.
Yeah.
Term ultimately. So I got into just like regular old skateboarding when I was like 6, something like that, like pretty young. Caught the bug super hard, skating in the garage, skating in the alley, like, just good old fashioned skateboarding. And that's what I did for like years and years. Like I was like skater kid growing up, all the time. That was like my main thing. That was number one. And then I met this guy Dreyon Whitner, who like still skates, and he's a good friend still. He was like basically just bombing the hill outside of my house. Like I lived on a hill, and he was skating it, like on a longboard, like on not a skateboard.
Yeah.
And I was like, sick, dude. That's pretty cool, man. And so I just like went outside and was like talking to him, and he was like, all right, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna get this and this. You're gonna get a helmet, and then we're gonna go skate some hills. And I was like, all right, sold. Like, let's do it. and like that, pretty much the rest is history. Like he got me into that. We went to like my first outlaw within like a few months or so. I could like barely skate and barely slide and skate downhill. And so we went out to some outlaw, got smoked. It was great. Had a killer time.
Well, how old around?
Oh, that's a good point. 14.
Oh, so you've been
Probably
doing this
14.
for like a little bit more than what, 10, 12?
Yeah,
12
like
years?
12 years, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think I was about that age, right around 14.
Sure.
Maybe 13, 14, somewhere in there. And so we were big on slide jams at that time, which was like, it's like free riding, like I was talking about earlier, but it's just on like a straight hill. You just go out and like bust a bunch of power slides, like every which way, just stand up slides, like on super slidey wheels, and you just do it in every creative way possible. Yeah. So that was my introduction to the sport, was like slide jams, and everybody within the scene, everybody kind of remembers like the age of slide jams. It was a good time. Everyone was having fun. Like wheels were getting slidey. Like it was kind of new and fresh, and it was really fun for everybody at that time. So
sweet.
And then I moved to North Carolina for college, and that like started like putting my hand down more, and like skating downhill more, like speed oriented stuff, because there's a lot of hills in North Carolina. And pretty much just roll with it from there. Traveled, took a year off school. I lived in a van with my buddy, and we traveled like all over up north and out west, and racing out west is where I raced some guys that were like actually like more well known. They were like on the scene, and did kind of well against them, and I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. And that was what sparked the transition to the international circuit.
Nice, man.
So
it's a hell of a story. And now this is like very unrelated to longboarding, but I think something I've gathered in my time in Golden here is that there's a lot of cross sport, like multi-athlete, that kind of vibe where people, they might do longboarding and then skiing and then climbing and every other outdoor activity. So there was a year where you took some time off to do a bike trip, right? It was a fundraiser.
Yeah.
And you helped coordinate that.
Yeah. Big COVID year. That was like 2020, like dawn of COVID. I was like going to go on tour again. I was going to go to Europe, and it was like, COVID, what? Tour's canceled. So what else am I going to do? And some buddies were getting really keen, and they were gearing up to ride the Western Wildlands route, which is like a route from Canada to Mexico. It kind of parallels the Tour Divide, but it goes to like a different set of states. It goes to like Idaho and Utah and stuff instead of like Colorado and Montana.
Right.
All gravel biking, self-supported. And I was like, cool, I'm gonna jump on this trip. Like, let's just do it. And we were doing it as a fundraiser for the Crisis Center in Birmingham. So, it wasn't like a bike per mile. It wasn't like a pay per mile thing, but it was just like, hey, we're doing this thing, and also like, if
you want to contribute,
if you want to
go here,
yeah, exactly. Like,
how
many
of y'all?
There was, 5 of us to start.
Yeah.
To start, it was 5 of us. So I had didn't even plan to do the whole thing. Like I had a job was like getting lined up as I was gearing up for the trip. So
Sure.
I was just gonna do like Canada to Utah, and then our other buddy Ian got like dislocated his elbow like in the middle of it. Like I'm laughing, but like it was a major bummer. But you know,
I mean,
hindsight's pretty.
you're being humble. You still went like 1,500 miles.
Yeah,
right?
we did go. Went pretty far.
Yeah.
Went pretty far.
Yeah.
Still.
Well, I guess
way,
what
but,
was the total for the guys who went all the way through? Like, what was the total?
I
Distance?
really should know this stat. I think it's 3,000 miles.
Okay. Where did you start, or where did
you
everyone
start? So we flew into Kalispell.
Okay.
and then you like go to the border. We rode to the border from
Right,
there,
right.
and then so like right at the border. You couldn't go across the border. That's actually why we didn't do the Tour Divide, because the Tour Divide you have to do the whole thing. It requires that you ride in Canada a little bit, and we couldn't get into Canada.
Oh,
'cause
yeah,
of
yeah,
COVID.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
So we were like, well, this other route, you don't have to
that's
go
funny.
to Canada. We can like still lock down the whole thing, you know.
Yeah. And where did it end up?
Ended up in at the Mexican border.
Which
in
state?
which state? New Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, I think New Mexico. I wasn't there for that part, but I'm pretty sure New Mexico. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, should be New Mexico. But it's great, killer trip. You know, big mile days and focusing. I think that's really like with any of the trips, like whether it's being on tour for racing and like doing Euro tour for a month or like a big bike trip or whatever, like just like being in the sauce every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is something special.
Yeah.
No doubt. So. It's all the sports are like connected in my head. You know what I mean? Like whether you're skiing or biking or climbing or kayaking or skating, it's all the same thing.
Yeah, it's like a full immersion into whatever it is you're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And also, like, because like they are inherently dangerous sports, like you have to go full force. Like you can't half-ass it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Or like you'll get killed.
Yeah. I mean, kind of. Yeah. You gotta, like dive in. You know what I mean? Like it's definitely, it's safer to like with skating. Like it's safer to skate fast. That's like at least consistent. Not your full speed, but like it's safer to like get down focused at least.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know what I mean? Than be like hesitant or worried and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, that's the draw. I mean, that's really like that's what it is. I think that's why like, it's just so engaging. That's why you see like, kids with like ADHD and so like if you counted the amount of downhitters that have ADHD, it's like all of them. Like it's like every single one of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the only time that those kids get to like focus finally. You know? What I mean? Whether it's skating downhill or like doing any of those extreme sports, I think it's like a lot of folks with like ADHD or like like depression, anxiety, like that's the same kind of thing.
Living on the edge,
into that just like committing yourself into something, engaging in something that consumes you like entirely. It takes your whole brain power, it takes everything to focus. You know what I mean? And so I think that's what draws a lot of that. Folks.
And I think another part is like. Going off of what you said, is you really need that mental fortitude. And, you got to like you get knocked down, you get back up, And so like for you in your experience, was there any time where you really started to doubt yourself or like doubt was there any kind of like self-doubt that affected the way you performed and like you had to kind of overcome that? Or was it always just like, I know I'm just going to get back tomorrow?
So, yeah, honestly, no. As far as injuries go, no, I wouldn't say so.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. I think there's a reason it's a pretty small sport. You know what I mean? You kind of got to like pay with skin, especially when you're starting out. Like you just kind of, it's like part of the deal. And it was just never a thought that I would like quit because of an injury. That just never occurred to me. But what does take people out of it more than anything is just like the lifestyle commitment. Like, because like I was saying, like people are in deep on this. Like you can't, I mean, going on tour is expensive. You know what I mean? Especially if you're like if you do a full tour, it's like you're going to go to Europe and like maybe like depending on the year, it might require like going to Europe, go to Australia, go to, like South Korea.
Right.
Like that was my big year, was those three places. And then also race in the States. And then for a lot of people, it also means racing in South America. Like that's a huge year. You pretty much have to forgo like a career, and like like, I mean, it's hard
It's not
to have,
exactly like
get
you can
married,
balance.
have kids, buy a house.
Yeah.
Like, you're not, you kind of have to at least put that stuff on hold.
Right.
And so I've had friends that have, like, I think they finally just said, like, you know what, this is just what it is.
It's time.
Like, or the opposite. They've just said, I've given up on,
yeah.
they're like, I'm just never going to, like, own a house, or I'm never going to, you know what I mean? They're like, this is what I do. They're nomadic.
Right. Yeah.
Full time, or at least like 6 months out of the year, 8 months out of the year, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, they work and then they just travel to race. And that's the hardest part of, like, is like, you still want to, like, train all the time and spend all your money traveling. Like, that's the hard part to stay in mentally.
Sure.
Of that mode of, like, okay, it's the off season, I gotta work and make money and still train.
Right.
And skate. Or a lot of people don't call it training. Like, I like to look at it like training. Some people just want to skate all the time anyway, and they're like, it's not training. This is, like, my favorite thing to do. But I look at it like training. I'm like, I like to do it, but I do it for racing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's all part of the, like, adventurous mindset. You know what I mean? In any endeavor, like, it's all, how can I keep my, like, mental sanity in check? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and just stay focused. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it's it takes a lot for sure. Like, to stay engaged in something like that, and it's given me tremendous respect for, like, athletes in sports where you just have to train more. Like, to be honest, this is not a training heavy sport. Like, you could take a lot of time off and still be competitive. There's not enough people doing it to, like, it's not,
it's a little different than
racing
NFL,
marathons or like, like, you're not an Olympic sprinter, right? We have to be like, every moment of the day is focused on nutrition and training and all that. It's like not even close to that. It's, that's, it's pretty mellow compared to that. And it still takes a lot. Even at that level. So I look at, serious endurance athletes and other, like, like Olympians and stuff. I'm like, they're not getting paid. Like, a lot of them are, like, not getting, like, they're
doing it out of
really
love.
giving that up a lot. Like, when they talk about, the sacrifices and stuff, I think a lot of people write that off and they're like, well, what are you, you're not sacrificing. You're like a professional athlete.
Yeah.
They're sacrificing a ton. They're giving up a lot.
Right.
Because, like, you don't know that you're going to be, Shaun White doesn't know he's going to be Shaun White. There's a lot of years there where you're just grinding. You're just.
And I imagine that would be, like, kind of that self-doubt where it's like, you're good. That, like, you're very good, you're very competitive, but it's like, is all this time and effort worth it? Like, am I really ever going to get to that level? Yeah. You know what I mean? And because statistically speaking, most people don't.
You're not.
So
you're probably not.
That probably gets to you after a while, but.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely, it's impressive. Anytime I see an athlete that's, like, seriously, in it on a sport that takes a lot of time, I'm like, that's impressive, because they really are sacrificing a lot more than I'm sacrificing for this. You know what I mean? Like, it's,
And there's a lot that, like you're saying, like, behind the scenes stuff, you don't. Yeah. A lot more than what meets the eye.
But, I mean, I'm talking about sacrificing stuff where, like, it's not the sickest thing ever. Like, it's fantastic to go. I mean, when you're on it, it's the shit. Like,
of course,
you're out with, your good buddies, traveling in foreign countries, eating great food. Like, being on tour is the best thing ever. Like, it's fantastic. Like, you're usually broke. Yeah. You're out there with, like, a piece of bread and some cheese and, like, a half-warm beer, looking out at the Alps. You know what I mean? Like, just hanging out in between races. Nothing on the docket to do other than, like, ride skateboards with your buddies and, like, drive like 20 hours or something. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, okay, we got, like, 4 days. We got to get to the Czech Republic and, where the beer's going to be cheaper and the next race is there. And let's, like, it's great. Like, it is the dream. Oh.
So the sport of downhill skateboarding, I think, kind of has a preconceived notion of being a male-dominated sport. But in your experience, would you say that's the case, or are there actually quite a bit of female racers as well? Or
so in terms of, like, the raw numbers, like, yes, it's male-dominated. Like, as far as, like, there are dramatically more men than women participating in downhill. In other aspects of longboarding that might not be true, like longboard, like dancing and stuff.
Yeah. Sure.
It's like a lot of cross steps and stuff like that. But there are, like, women racers, and they're badass. Like, they're like really sick. There's, like, This one woman, Emily Pross, who's like just fucking like really gnarly
Nuts.
racer. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
she and like it's one of the few sports where like she like really is competing in like the open like this. So there's historically like when she was like on the circuit more. She hasn't been on the circuit as much in the last like year or two, but when she was on the international like the IDF circuit, International Downhill Federation circuit, pre-COVID. The way it was structured, there's an open category and there's a women's category. There's no men's category. There's open, which is
okay,
anybody,
yeah,
and there's women's, juniors, and what they call masters, which is 35 and up.
Okay.
And so she was like really competitive in the open category. I think she finished. I'd have to check the stats. I think she finished top 5 in the world in the open category.
Oh wow.
Like at least one time, maybe more. I mean, she was like. Definitely podiuming, if not fully winning international races, like in the open category.
Yeah.
And dominated the women's category. Like I don't think she has come second in a women's race in like, God, probably like 7 or 8 years now.
Really?
Like she's won every single one, every single heat at every single race.
Yeah.
She's really gnarly. And so like that's pretty sick to see because there's not a ton of sports where like that's the case, right? Like, and so I think it's super rad that like she can be like a like a role model for like girls and
anyone.
stuff
girls or
everybody,
boys, you know what I mean?
everybody to like look and be like prior to Emily Pross, I don't think anybody
thought about
would have genuinely told you that they thought that a woman could have competed in the men's category, like whether they were like being honest with themselves or what, like no one had seen it happen, so it would have been hard to picture. It's like hard to picture someone breaking that mold, right? Like it's just tough,
and it's already a small sample of people, you know what I mean?
Right.
So.
And Emily just came in and shouted that. She was like, I'm here to race, and I'm not here to just race in the women's category. I'm here to throw it down. And she is an aggressive racer. She is a really, really talented racer in skateboard. And then there's like, she's not the only one. Like the other women that race are sick. Like really sick. Like there's plenty of dudes that they'll smoke. You know what I mean? Like a lot of dudes that they'll smoke. So Ashley Weinkauf and Con's ripping. Friend Lauren's ripping, and Lisa and Anna, and like there's like all these like sick women who are like just rad and fucking rip.
Now so like in the instance where you said that her name was Emily. So like when Emily would race in kind of the open circuit, I don't know anything about it. Is her weight comparable to other guys, or is she like significantly lighter?
I mean she's pretty built. Like she's got muscle on her. You know what I mean? She was like training a lot at the time to get enough muscle to be competitive. So she wasn't like, I mean the bigger racers are like, pretty big, so like she wasn't as like,
well that the reason
size,
I ask is because it's like weight matters.
The weight matters.
You know
the weight absolutely matters for racing. And I think she built up enough muscle to like clearly
she's doing something right.
And there's like, you don't have to be heavy like necessarily. Like there are definitely lighter riders who kill it. Like there are folks who are like Chase Hiller is one of the top guys. I think he's like 145 pounds. Like he's which
crazy.
Is really light for a downhill skater.
It's pretty cool that the sport is like so open in that sense, where like it doesn't really just be a good racer. It doesn't really matter if you're a guy or a girl, heavy, not heavy. Like people from all over can like compete.
It's one of those things where like, we try to be open and stuff, but any sport that's got like that many men in it, like there's a level of, we have to be conscious of like trying to be intentional about making it more accessible to women. I think we can definitely do a better job of that. There's certainly an amount of like, there's definitely assholes in the sport, and like, there's always room to like make it more accessible to other groups of people, and we definitely are not perfect, not even close to perfect in that respect. So it's something that we need to work on as a sport, encouraging more women to come, making sure the events are like, like safe for women in general and welcoming, and so that's something that I've definitely had complaints from women about, that they're like, hey, like we don't feel comfortable going to this event because this organizer or that or somebody, like whoever it is, you know what I mean? Like there's somebody problematic at the event, or there's, they don't feel welcome for, valid reasons. And so that's something that we need to be better and call that out. And,
yeah, sure. And I mean, and that's like the United States perspective, right? You go to like somewhere else and it could be way worse. It could be way better, so it's just like kind of getting that exposure worldwide of like, hey, this is a pretty cool sport. Like, it doesn't matter where you come from. Like, you can, if you're good, just hop on a board and try it.
I mean, it's not an expensive sport to try out.
Yeah.
Other than like, you should probably have good health insurance.
Yeah.
But, like, outside of the hospital bills,
it's
the international racing gets expensive, but like it's on a scale, right? So like compared to racing cars, it's very cheap.
Right.
Compared to racing bikes, it's very cheap. Or skis, or like pretty much compared to racing anything, it's remarkably cheap.
Yeah.
But it's still, kind of expensive. But it's a great sport to just like, you can just get a board and a helmet and some gloves, and like you can have the most professional setup. Like, you can have a fully pro race setup for like, I don't know, like $800
yeah,
or something, which is a lot of money, but not for like the app. What's like a pro like a elite tier like mountain bike.
Yeah.
Like a downhill bike. It's like $15,000. Like, it's way more expensive. You know what I mean? And you can get a pretty good downhill setup and get into the sport for like, I don't know, like $300 like a totally legit board that like you can rage on. You can totally go fast on. For like pretty cheap. So it's accessible.
Yeah, for sure.
In certain ways, you know what I mean? As long as you like live near hills and have health insurance.
Yeah, I think those are kind of like the top two.
Pretty crucial.
You got good health insurance, maybe life insurance, and then if you have a hill, I think you're good.
Hill and it's a good on tour again.
So where's kind of the future hold? Like, or what does the future hold? Like,
that's a good question.
Because COVID put a pause on things for a little bit,
but it's back.
Yeah,
it's back now. So we've got there's this new governing body everybody's really excited about. It's called it's going to get more complicated. There's the WGSF, which hosts the WDSC. And I don't know why they went with two different acronyms, but they're doing a great job, so we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt on that. Yeah. And they're televising this race series, so they're trying to do like a pro circuit that's eventually will be like invitational. They'll be televised and all that jazz. And it's actually been, this past season was already televised on CNBC, but not in America, like CNBC Europe, Asia, Australia, and like a bunch of other continents and countries, but not in the States. And you can watch it on like, there's like an app, it's called the Recast app, and you can like watch the races. And it's like some of the best race coverage I've ever seen. I mean, it's
really?
Like, it's really next level, because usually there's no coverage at all.
Yeah. Sure.
Sometimes there's a little bit of coverage, but these have been like professional coverage, and they've been great. So everybody's holding their breath to see like what happens with that. Could be really dope. Could be a whole new chapter for downhill.
Yeah.
And a big tour, and
Yeah.
So we'll see. They haven't announced any of the events for next year yet. They just wrapped up this tour.
Okay.
Congratulations to Diego. He won it, my man. He's a good buddy, and did a killer season. He's absolutely on fire. So so we're all waiting to see what happens next year. In the meantime, we've got Teutonia coming up, which is a big race.
And also, Brazil. Just when he says next year, this episode is recorded in 2022. So
yeah.
Probably when it's released, you can go online and find the schedule
and see what's happening. Yeah, exactly. That's true. Yeah. So before then we've got Teutonia, which is gonna be sick. It's this fast race in Brazil. It's been going on for years and years, and it's Teutonia is like it's a legendary race. Like it's like a 70+ mile an hour course.
Oh wow!
And which would be already like fast, except that they've been going 70 on this course for like 20 years or something. I don't know. Someone's gonna like correct me on that and be like, it's actually like whatever, some other number. But
generally,
it's a long time in the world of downhill. Like gear was really rough. 20 years ago, like, it was really bad. And there's like these absolutely legendary photos of dudes in like a full motorcycle suit, like not like a race suit, but just like a motorcycle suit from like a pawn shop with no helmet and no like they're on a trash board and just like some sunglasses on, just raging 70 miles an hour down this track, dude. It's like absolutely psychotic.
Yeah.
So the pavement had gotten super rough there, and they weren't racing, or maybe They might have still been racing and just nobody traveled there because it was like not worth it. But it's getting repaved like as we speak.
Nice.
I've seen pictures. It's confirmed that they're actively repaving it. So that's going to be sweet. I'm really excited to go to that race and like check it out because it's kind of steeped in the lore of like Brazilian downhill.
Yeah,
you know?
sure.
So I'm really psyched for that one.
Cool, man.
Fingers crossed, let's go fast.
Yeah. Well, I obviously wish you the best, man. And it's going to be fun to watch and follow along. And I just think it's a really, really unique story. It's a unique sport. So it's just really cool to talk to you and hear about it. And I'm super pumped you sat down with me and had the chat.
I appreciate it. I had a great time. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, man. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Cheers.